Hi, it's Tansel here. So I often get asked, how do I learn a language really, really fast? Right now, the answer isn't that easy because when you go out and do courses, what you're presented with is a lot of grammar, a lot of workbooks, a lot of exercises to get your brain going, and that's great. It's great that you have a lot of rules to learn and all that sort of stuff, but in reality, we're not going to take away those workbooks and be able to speak in public, right? Because how are you going to put together the rules so quickly? So, really, the aim in order to speak a language really quickly is to learn the phrases, right? Because a phrase is in context with something, whereas if you memorize words, or if you just know some nouns or things like that, then what's going to happen is they're going to be out of context, so you're not going to be able to know how to put them in a sentence structure either. So, fastest way is to memorize sentences. Now, how do you do that? Now, there's a lot of memory strategies and techniques that I usually talk about, right? And it just depends on how you want to be able to keep that in your head, right? And retain it, because the ultimate aim is to be able to speak, right, and communicate. And most of the people in my dealings, I coach them with learning languages, it's they just want to be able to speak. They just want to speak and communicate with people, and that's essentially it. So, in order to do that, you have to be able to memorize some phrases. So things like, how do I get to a particular place, or what time does such and such happen, or where is the toilet? So things like that. You want to be able to know, and if you just get the word toilet in context, in on its own, or if you just get the bus on its own, or if you get some other word on its own, it could be in multiple contexts. So it's always good to know the strategy to memorize phrases. Now, I've said in my books, especially in the How to Learn Almost Anything in 48 Hours, that if you get 1,500 phrases of any language and you memorize them, then you're able to speak most of that language, like 80% of that language. And how that works is familiarity. I can't even say that word, familiarity, right? Of those words in context. So that's what you're essentially looking at. And you're also looking at connecting those sentences the more and more times you say them. So, what does this do? It helps build that habit in your head of learning that language and saying it out. And if you know the phrase, you can practice them, right? You can go somewhere and even, you can't really go somewhere now, but you can do it online. Essentially, you can chat with people and have those conversations in those phrases. So it's a great way to learn. And this sort of dates back to how we learnt as kids. Now, if you ask yourself, well, how do I learn a language as a child? How did I learn my mother tongue? Well, our parents spoke to us that language, right? Over and over and over again. They repeated phrases, not necessarily words, but phrases, right? And we learnt that with repetition. Our parents said it over and over and over again, right? And what happens is after many, many repetitions, the brain gets used to that. So you know that those phrases and words, right? Now, as adults, we can do that too, but we've got time restrictions, right? So it's going to take us very, very long, and we have other things to do, right? And we're not like sponges like little kids to absorb all that information. So what we can do is use memory techniques to memorize those phrases, right? And this is where the power of memory really comes in, is once you memorize those phrases, instead of repeating them over and over again hundreds of times, memory techniques help you to do it in, say, one or two goes, and that's it. You've retained that, right? And what's the difference? The difference is time, right? Hundreds of, maybe thousands of repetitions versus maybe one or two, right? Difference is massive. And then once you've done that a couple of times, you can go back and review anytime you want. But in essence, you've saved yourself a lot of time. Therefore, you can go ahead and memorize, say, 1,500 phrases, right? Now, it may not take you a short amount of time still, because 1,500 phrases is a lot, right? But if you can do a few a day, or 10 a day, or 20 a day, whatever it is, and you've got a solid plan, a solid structure, then within a matter of 3 to 6 months, you've got most of that language. Now, that's pretty cool, right? To be able to speak any language. And you could do this for any language, by the way. It doesn't matter how hard or easy it is. People mostly speak the same thing, right? I'm going here, or I'm doing this, or how much is this, right? So If you learn those things, you'll speak most of the language. Now, obviously, the idea is once you've got the basic level of speaking, that's going to inspire you to learn even more, isn't it? So that's the beauty of learning languages this way, is just little steps, little goals, because when we look at learning languages, we look at it in a really overwhelming way, right? I'm going to learn Chinese. Oh no, it's overwhelming. But if we take little steps, learn a few phrases, be able to say them and have fun in the process, then guess what? That's going to motivate and inspire you to go even further. So that's the beauty of learning languages using memory techniques. Now, what sort of techniques work best? Well, there's many of them. And again, it depends on what you want to be able to do, right? And that's what I do as a coach, is I help people to find out what strategy works best for them so they can go out and learn really, really quickly and be able to speak and have fun. Because at the end of the day, learning shouldn't be a chore. It shouldn't be this really arduous process, right? It should be fun. It should be exciting. And we should look forward to learning. And that's what memory techniques does. It makes things really exciting, because now instead of rote learning and repetition, you're using imagination, you're using color, you're using fun, silly stories to retain, to learn, to do something that you've never been able to do before, right? So in order to learn a language, memorize the phrases, and there's many ways to do that. If you want more information, you can feel free to contact me on my website, which will be in the descriptions on my websites, on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. But if you want more and more of this content, let me know in the comments, because I'll start to video more and more since we're all in lockdown. And I'll try and get more content like this, especially more specific content like learning Chinese and Japanese characters, which I've done before, which is really, really fun. So I'll try and get that out to as much as you can. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Feel free to get on my website, tansel.com. Send me a message, maybe book a meeting, and we can have a bit of a chat. It's always good to chat to new people. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.